For the royals, tradition is everything.
Tradition is the raison d'etre of the royal family, the human embodiment of Britishness.
Spectacular.
The thundering of the hooves and the banging of the drums. I defy anyone not to get thrilled by that.
Sacred.
It's almost as though the king is invested with superpowers.
And very British.
Victoria's funeral was a reminder that we were still the dog's whatnots at this game.
Now we reveal the secrets of those traditions, from banquets to christenings to coronations.
You may think it's pantomime, but no. The uniforms were handed down from servant to servant.
And how some traditions can go wrong.
With Elizabeth I, her body actually exploded in its coffin.
It's a rich royal heritage that's been forged through duty to the nation.
The British monarchy is always at the service of the British state.
No matter what the task.
The duty of the royals is to go and open every damn thing that's around, from a supermarket to sewage works.
The Queen loved it. Prince Philip hated it.
As for over 1,000 years, the royals have shaped the history and the traditions we know today.
They're sending out a message. This is an ancient institution and it's here to stay.
These are the secrets of royal traditions, then and now. This time, the touching traditions on display at the Queen's funeral.
Everything in her life was planned to the finest detail, including her funeral.
The secret messages royals have been sending us for centuries.
She was said to have owned 6,000 dresses. Each one had a very deliberate meaning.
And the great royal tradition that saw Britannia rule the waves.
What better way to manifest the power of the British state than to break a bottle of wine against the hulk of a ship?
On the 8th of September, 2022, after 70 years on the throne, Queen Elizabeth II died. What followed was a royal tradition the likes of which few of us have ever seen. A funeral like no other. Over 10 extraordinary days, the world watched as 4 royal palaces, 3 churches, horses, hearses, carriages, planes, and over 6,000 military personnel played their part in a finely choreographed state funeral that was decades in the planning.
Everything in her life was planned to the finest detail, including her funeral.
In terms of elaborateness, there had been no funeral in the whole of British history like the funeral of Elizabeth II.
The rituals enacted were unseen in nearly a century, but they weren't without precedent, because as an official state funeral, there was a strict set of traditions to be followed. Rules that were shaped over 1,000 years of history.
There are elements which you might have seen in, say, Nelson's funeral, the Duke of Wellington's funeral, Churchill's funeral.
Like Winston Churchill nearly 60 years earlier, according to tradition, the late Queen's coffin was taken to Westminster Hall, the oldest building in the Houses of Parliament.
This amazing space is the grandest medieval hall in the world. It was set out at the end of the 11th century by William II, the son of William the Conqueror. And what he created was a hall 240 feet long, 67 feet wide. By far the biggest hall in England, almost certainly the largest in Europe. It was perfect for state ceremonial, occasion, feasts, you name it. There was nothing that could match it.
This rich history makes Westminster Hall the perfect place to celebrate the most public of royal funeral traditions, the lying in state.
Lying in state is an extraordinary ritual, really. It's an opportunity to take part in a moment of history.
The inspiration of it dates back centuries, when a monarch would effectively lie in state, though it wasn't called that. Their body would often be at Westminster, and there would be a sort of candlelit vigil around it by members of their household. It was a much more private affair, though, not at all like the crowds that we saw for the lying in state of Queen Elizabeth II.
The first British monarch to lie in state publicly was Edward VII in 1910. This tradition has continued through 6 state funerals, until that of the late Queen, when 250,000 people queued to pay their respects.
The queues down the embankment, waiting to just say goodbye to our Queen. I think that's very moving.
Mourners waited up to 25 hours in a 10-mile-long queue, because for many, the Queen was more than a monarch.
I think it's a moment for the public to reflect on what this woman meant to them. This woman who, for all of their lifetime, was there in the background, the backbone in the fabric of our nation, really. And suddenly they felt they wanted to go there and say, well, thank you and goodbye.
After 4 days lying in state, a gun carriage carried the Queen's coffin to Westminster Abbey, continuing a tradition established during Queen Victoria's funeral. With ranks of marching soldiers, gun salutes, and that iconic gun carriage, it was a powerful statement of Britain's military might.
Victoria's funeral was a reminder that in the high noon of empire, we were still the dog's whatnots at this game. And while today we no longer have the empire, what we retain is, if you like, the flummery, the pomp, the pageantry.
The traditions are there for a reason. It's not just the pomp and the pageantry for the sake of it. They're sending out a message. This is an ancient institution and it's here to stay.
Queen Elizabeth's funeral was the greatest display of pageantry and tradition seen in our lifetime. But there are many royal traditions we see day to day, such as the deceptively simple act of dressing to send a message.
Dressing to convey meaning has gone back for centuries. And one of the best examples was Queen Elizabeth I. She was said to have owned 6,000 dresses. Each one had a very deliberate meaning.
Diana knew how to use imagery to send a message, and people got that message loud and clear.
In 2021, the then Duchess of Cambridge continued the long royal tradition of power dressing when she attended a Bond film premiere, swathed in gold sequins.
The effect was delicious, winsome. Even better, the designer was British, Jenny Packham, and the timing was brilliant. Why? Because this was the great post-pandemic fanfare. This was a display to the nation that normalcy had returned, that we once more could go out and grace our respective red carpets, even if it just meant going down to your local cinema.
Some thought the dazzling dress might also contain another coded message.
Some would say, if they were looking to be, dare I say, a little bit naughty, this was also Kate establishing herself in the face of the Sussex onslaught.
Commentators speculated that the dress was a very public power move, designed to tell Harry and Meghan that as the future king and queen, William and Kate were the one and only golden couple.
And just by putting on a frock, Kate reminded the whole wide world of that.
Coming up, the great royal tradition of unveiling plaques.
Prince Philip hated it. The Queen loved it, as long as the cord worked. And the curtains went back swiftly.
Launching ships.
Then she said, come on now, Captain, splice the main brace and had a lovely drink.
And dressing with intent.
The mantle is decorated with ears and eyes, literally body parts.
Some royal traditions are rarely seen. But there's one that we witness week in, week out. The great royal tradition of opening things.
The duty of the royals is to go and open every damn thing that's around, you know, from a supermarket to sewage works to huge buildings to parliaments.
I have now much pleasure in declaring this block of flats open.
There's a very long tradition of royals opening state buildings, public buildings, giving their name to things. This is another very useful mechanism for a monarch to get their name and sometimes their image out there. So by putting their name to something, it helps to remind people that they're there.
It's a tradition that might get a little tedious at times.
Prince Philip hated it. The Queen loved it. As long as the cord worked and the curtains went back swiftly.
But there's one tradition that generations of royals seem to relish.
What better way, what cheaper, easier way to manifest the power, the regal majesty of the British state than to break a bottle of wine against the hulk of a ship?
God bless her and all who sail in her. Oh, it must be such fun to launch a ship. The Queen loved that.
Over 7 decades, the Queen sent 21 bottles smashing against bows, launching more ships than anyone else in the nation's history. The tradition might seem like it belongs to the age of colossal cruise ships and aircraft carriers, but in fact, it's as old as shipbuilding itself.
The tradition goes back to ancient Greece of blessing a ship, almost christening a ship, so traditionally throwing water over it and, you know, sending it to sea with their blessing. Now, water then turned into wine and champagne.
Over the centuries, dousing the deck with wine was swapped for the much more satisfying smash of a bottle on the bow.
I remember the late Queen Mother. She went back to the Ark Royal, the aircraft carrier, and she was 101 at the time. She walked along, leaning a little bit one way. Everyone was, oh, she's going to be all right, you know. But she made it to the assembly of all the sailors, and she made a little speech. And then she said, well, come on now, Captain, splice the main brace, and had a lovely drink, because she would like to have a little drink. And you could see she absolutely loved every moment of that occasion.
From Henry VIII and Elizabeth I to the Princess of Wales, royals have traditionally used dress to make statements. And none more so than Diana during her acrimonious separation from Prince Charles. By the summer of 1994, Diana and Charles were heading for divorce. Theirs was a bitter breakup, played out across the front pages.
The War of the Wales was the entire drama that unfolded between Charles and Diana. The ill-fated marriage, the affairs, the infidelity, the separation, the divorce. It was also a media war.
There's a lot of sniping between both of them, and it got more and more intense, and it was largely conducted through their friends, anonymous briefings to the newspapers mainly, but also to other media figures. Both sides started slinging all sorts of muck and allegations about the other to try and maintain some kind of advantage in the public's mind's eye. The newspapers presented Charles as a cold husband, an indifferent father. It painted him very much as the villain of the piece and Diana as the victim.
It seemed Diana was winning the battle for public sympathy. To tell his side of the story, Charles filmed an explosive interview, which was due to be broadcast on the 29th of June.
There was a huge amount of press attention in the days and weeks leading up to it, and it's all built up to a climax. And of course, what everyone wanted to know was, what would Diana do? Where would she be? Would she be watching it? How would she respond to it?
Faced with an awkward or embarrassing situation, the usual royal protocol was to say nothing and stay out of the spotlight. But Diana had other ideas.
The same night that Prince Charles's documentary aired, Princess Diana was not staying at home, crying into her pajamas. She was getting dressed up for a fabulous party at the Serpentine Gallery.
That evening, at her Kensington home, Princess Diana decided to ignore royal protocol and step into the spotlight.
She looked through her wardrobe and her eyes alit on this outfit she'd never worn before. She thought it was too daring for her to wear.
That night was the night she decided she could be as daring as she wanted.
Even if that meant defying royal etiquette.
Now, traditionally, royals don't wear black unless they're going to a funeral. But Diana, after her separation, had completely ripped up the royal style book.
Meanwhile, royal photographer Anwar Hussain received a vital tip-off.
There was rumors going on that something very big is going to happen this evening and people should come. Diana used to send messages through somebody without us knowing that it was her who was leaked this information. She told reporters, I'm going to do something very big. It's going to take on the whole royal family.
Just before Charles's interview hit the screens, Princess Diana arrived at the Serpentine Gallery for the event.
She made sure they parked the car quite far away. Once the door opened, she was full of confidence. Bring it on, I'll take it on. That was her attitude. You can see from the way she walked and how glamorous she looked. I've never seen her like that. She was there to kill.
The little black dress made a big statement.
It was off the shoulder, it revealed cleavage, it was cinched very tightly at the waist. It was a fantastic dress that screamed, I'm an independent woman. It also said to Charles, if you like, look at what you're missing. And it very quickly, within about a day, became known as the revenge dress.
It was revenge against the public, the media, against all the negative portrayals of her as being loopy or unhinged or vulnerable or a victim. It was the outfit that said, I'm no one's victim, I'm my own woman.
And the revenge dress had the desired effect.
I think it's fair to say that she weaponized her fashion choices that night because it achieved everything that she could have possibly have wanted. She looked $1 million. She was on the front page of every paper. And I think that helped enormously, in her view, in sort of counterbalancing what Charles was up to. It showed that Diana was not going to hide away and that she was prepared to confront whatever her husband might throw in her face, and she was going to come out a stronger woman for it.
Princess Diana looked like she was the future of womankind and the monarchy and culture in the mid-90s.
With the revenge dress, Diana continued the long royal tradition of using clothes to send a message. A tradition pioneered by Elizabeth I.
If you look at that picture, the mantle that she's wearing, this exquisite mantle, is decorated with ears and eyes, literally body parts, bits of anatomy. You think, what is going on in that picture? Look closely at it. And of course, that's the all-seeing queen. She is the omnipresent, omnipotent sovereign. She sees you. She is the all-seeing eye.
This extraordinary dress is preserved for posterity in what's known as the rainbow portrait. It's a stunning example of the great royal tradition of using portraits to send a message to the world. A tradition Elizabeth learned from the greatest master of the art, her own father.
Henry VIII took royal portraiture to a whole other level. This was royal PR at its finest.
He's got this great barrel chest, the codpiece, the legs apart, the penetrating stare, the hands on the hip, the thumping great dagger. He's not a man to be messed with. That is what that portrait's saying. It's this kind of extraordinary exemplar of power.
For Henry, as for other monarchs, projecting an image of power was more than simply a matter of pride.
It was dangerous for a monarch to show any signs of frailty, because then the vultures would start to circle. His enemies, his rivals from overseas, if they think the King of England isn't long for this world, they might start to plan invasion.
For centuries, royals have used portraiture to send a message to their rivals and their subjects. Every monarch has embraced this tradition, from Henry VIII and Charles II to Queen Elizabeth II, who was painted over 1,000 times during her reign. Of these portraits, perhaps the most striking and controversial was painted by artist Lucian Freud.
Lucian Freud was one of the most successful popular figurative artists of the 20th century. He was particularly well known for his really searingly truthful images of people. For nudes, which are very uncompromising, quite gritty, not particularly pretty.
So eyebrows were raised when the Queen agreed to be his subject.
It's quite a brave decision of the Queen.
Freud offered to paint the Queen for free. And after years of secret negotiations, the Queen accepted.
He kept insisting that the Queen would need to come to his studio, and he was asking for at least 72 sittings. The Queen, of course, is a phenomenally busy woman. She doesn't normally give more than a handful of sittings to any one portrait painter.
Eventually, they compromised. Freud would come to the Queen, painting her in 20 sessions, far fewer than the original 72 sittings requested.
When he realised he would have much less time, he just immediately shrunk the size of the canvas. It's a really small, almost postcard-sized painting of the Queen. You'd see this cropped version of the Queen's head and shoulders with just that edge of the crown coming over her head. She could almost be one of us.
When it was revealed to the public in December 2001, this was the most personal and least traditional of the Queen's official portraits. And not surprisingly, it caused quite a stir.
You had some newspapers saying it was deep and exploratory, and then you had others saying it was an absolute travesty, and how could this thing be let out in public?
He's not exactly a flattering portrait painter.
What the Queen thought, I don't know.
But what we do know is that for many, this portrait will go down as one of the least flattering ever created. Coming up, the tools of royal tradition, used to project the monarchy's power, from priceless diamonds.
It was this incredible 3,106 carat rough, sort of like a small ostrich egg.
To golden balls.
No one else, other than a king or a queen, can turn up at a party with a sceptre and a great ball of gold.
At the heart of the grandest royal ceremonies, from coronations to funerals, are the crown jewels. These spectacular treasures, steeped in centuries of tradition, are the royals' tools of the trade. And none is more traditional than the orb and sceptre.
Nothing says royalty quite like an orb and sceptre. No one else, other than a king or a queen, can turn up at a party with a sceptre and a great ball of gold.
The orb and sceptre are the ultimate power tools, rooted in symbolism that stretches back millennia.
The orb itself is the symbol of the cosmos, the whole wide world. And then the three sections you can see into which the orb is divided is the way in which we perceived the then world, which was Europe, Asia, and Africa. And of course, the cross on the top, Christendom. Christendom overseeing the world.
The orb's origins date back long before the British royal family to the most powerful imperial rulers of all time, the Romans. The sceptre is even more ancient. For that, we have to thank the pharaohs.
It doesn't matter whether it's an old man's staff, a peasant's crook, the idea of the sovereign rod, the stick of temporal power. That is what the sceptre is. It is about authority.
As a statement of power, Britain's orb and sceptre aren't exactly subtle. When King Charles II ordered them for his coronation in 1661, he went all in.
The sceptre is nearly a metre-long golden rod, and it is encrusted with jewels. There are 333 diamonds, 31 rubies, there are 15 emeralds, 6 spinels, and 1 large composite amethyst.
At the top of the sceptre is the great star of Africa, the Cullinan I diamond. It is absolutely stunning, and it is 530.2 carats in size.
That's over 100 grams of pure diamond. And though it might look like a sacred and unchangeable object, it's not. The Cullinan diamond at its head was only added in 1910, nearly 250 years after the sceptre's creation.
The royal family have a different approach to these sacred objects than the rest of us. They are very happy to edit and change them.
To the royal family, this is the chance for each monarch with these objects to put their own stamp on it, their own twist.
King Edward VII knew just the thing. Recently discovered in the British imperial colony of South Africa, the largest diamond ever discovered, the Cullinan diamond.
It was this incredible 3,106 carat rough, sort of like a small ostrich egg. It was an enormous piece of diamond.
Unsurprisingly, the diamond attracted a lot of attention when it was sent over to London.
It was under great pomp and circumstance. It was sort of publicly known that this diamond was going to be put on a paddle steamer with detectives and guards. But the reality was, it was actually put through the postal service so that it remained utterly secure and unknown.
After the diamond was popped in the post, the royal family was left with a problem. A diamond that big is actually not very practical.
The stone was then sent to the Netherlands to be cut down. It was made into 9 large stones and 97 smaller stones.
The king had the larger stone, Cullinan I, ingeniously added to his sceptre.
The sceptre has a secret element to it, which is that the top frame is hinged so that that massive diamond, Cullinan I, can be taken out and used in other settings. I mean, what an expression of wealth and power.
Today, the magnificent orb and sceptre sit proudly on display in the Tower of London. But we're very lucky to still have them. In 1671, Charles II was almost responsible for losing these priceless treasures.
He decided to put them on public display in the Tower of London, where people could pay a fee to look at them. One person wanted to do more than look.
A man called Thomas Blood and a bunch of accomplices tried to steal the crown jewels from the Tower of London by sticking them down their trousers. Thankfully, he didn't get away, and thankfully, there is more security in the Tower of London today.
The crown jewels only leave the tower for state occasions, like the late Queen's funeral. Royal funerals are planned with meticulous precision, according to centuries of finely honed tradition. But sometimes events happen that are so unexpected, so shocking, there's no tradition to follow.
I think of Diana's funeral as something which should never have happened. We were flying by the seat of our pants, really, because there was no plan for a Princess of Wales dying at such a young age. So the rule book was thrown out and a new one was written.
It was decided that Diana would have a traditional royal funeral. But in a break with tradition, the Spencer family would then bury the princess privately.
The day of the public funeral was something the world had never seen before and probably will never see again.
Over 1 million people crowded central London and lined the route. Diana's driver, Colin Tebbett, was one of the very few people to attend both Diana's public and private funerals.
We were very honoured by Lord Spencer to invite the staff to the funeral. We were in the choir stall. We couldn't have got any closer. We sat there right at the front with the royal family.
But unlike other royals, Diana wouldn't be buried in the Abbey or in the royal family's chapel at Windsor Castle. Instead, the princess was taken for a very private burial at her family estate at Althrop, Northamptonshire.
Every pavement filled to overflowing. A last chance to say goodbye. More flowers, more people.
As the gates closed behind her hearse, the TV coverage came to an end. And so did royal traditions. Instead of being buried in a royal chapel, Diana would be laid to rest on a private island within the Althrop estate.
Not a soul got anywhere near that island. Whoever did the arranging to seal off, and there are rolling fields everywhere. You know, there must have been a tremendous thing. I've never known how they did it, but nobody got near us. Not a soul, not a photograph, not a soul. The army put a bridge up across to the island, and the army walked across the bridge, carrying Her Royal Highness on their shoulders and lowered into where she'd been buried. The family then did what everybody does at a funeral, a family funeral, and went to the edge. I stood back with Paul. And then there were prayers said to be included with the household, two of us, with the very last bit of that burial of the boss being lowered. And you know, it's never really, I've never really grasped it really. It's always been did it really happen to me? But immensely emotional, immensely emotional. Very difficult to take in.
Two funerals, two very different styles. One incredibly public, with the general public massively involved, eyes of the world on Westminster Abbey, and the long funeral procession on the gun carriage. Very different funeral at Althorpe, quite short, with effectively her coffin being interred, buried in the ground.
The private island was a fitting final resting place for a woman who had lived her life in the public gaze.
We had to give the princess dignity and privacy in death to protect her, to keep her away from prying eyes, to keep her safe.
Coming up, the traditional royal treasure with a story straight out of a spy thriller.
Hidden in a secret alcove in her palace, the tiara was under the noses of the Bolshevik government for many years.
The dinner party surprise nobody asked for.
So he takes the fourth vertebra of Charles I's neck, puts it in his pocket and saves it, and he passes it round at dinner parties.
And the royal burial tradition that ended with a bang.
She hears the body, the corpse of the late Queen, explode inside her coffin.
Tradition runs through every aspect of royal life.
Tradition is very important for the royal family. It's what everything is based on. 1,000 years royal history and tradition is what keeps the royal family in business.
These traditions can be wonderful, weird, and occasionally revolting.
Looking back over the centuries, it could be a challenge if a monarch died a long way from London, where they were traditionally buried either at Westminster Abbey or slightly later at Windsor. And so traditionally there was quite a gap between death and burial.
Add in the time needed to organise a grand funeral fit for a monarch, and days soon turned to weeks.
With Elizabeth I, for example, it was well over a month before she was laid to rest at Westminster.
In an age before refrigeration, this tradition didn't bode well.
The funeral of Henry VIII in 1547 was overshadowed by the putrefaction of his corpse. And there were stories that the coffin began to leak in the chapel overnight, and it was some of his bodily fluids leaking out the side of the coffin. Apparently, a local dog came in and licked it up.
It seems his daughter Elizabeth's burial was similarly stomach-churning.
There's this wonderful account, and it's quite rare to have an account written by a woman at that time. She hears the body, the corpse of the late Queen, explode inside her coffin.
But at least Elizabeth was buried in more or less one piece. After losing his head to the executioner's axe in 1649, King Charles I was buried in St George's Chapel, Windsor. But did he take his decapitated head to his grave?
Was Charles I's head attached or not? Had it been sewn back on? And this question became the equivalent of that crossword clue you just can't solve.
By 1813, the intrigue had become too great for the then Prince Regent to resist.
If you thought that the only Tomb Raider out there was Lara Croft, well, there's another one, and that was the Prince Regent, future King George IV. So the Prince Regent asks the royal physician, Henry Halford, to go down into the royal vault in St George's Chapel, Windsor, and look at the grave of Charles I. Henry Halford opens the coffin and finds the body of Charles I wrapped in cloth and smeared with some greasy, unctuous matter. He takes the cloth off the body and says that actually the head still remains. It is blackened and the nose has lost its cartilage. But he says this is definitely Charles I because it looks just like Charles I in the bust. And then he gets out the head and he holds it up, and he can tell, he says, that it's been sawn off by a big blow. And that solves the question for the Prince Regent. Charles I's head was buried with him. And you'd think, now, poor Charles I can be put back to bed and really rest in peace at Windsor Castle at St George's Chapel for the rest of the days. But no, Henry Halford has found this all rather thrilling and decides to take a souvenir for himself. So he takes the fourth vertebra of Charles I's neck, puts it in his pocket and saves it, and he passes it round at dinner parties. So thanks to the Prince Regent's crazy obsession with whether or not Charles I's head was on or off, St George's Chapel at Windsor Castle becomes the scene of a royal grave robbery.
Tradition dictates that when the monarch's body is ready for burial, the crown jewels, the orb and sceptre, are placed on their coffin. But there's another set of royal jewels that are prohibited at a funeral. The royal family's collection of over 50 spectacular tiaras that are traditionally reserved for times of celebration.
Every little girl wants to put on her princess dress with a tiara. Not a crown. A crown's a bit OTT, but a tiara.
Each enchanting headpiece comes with a strict set of rules.
There's a bit of tradition that goes around tiaras. They except at weddings, they're not meant to be worn before 5 p.m. in the evening. Don't put your tiara on at tea time. That's not done.
Handing tiaras down through the generations is another family tradition.
There are a number of tiaras in the royal collection, and each royal bride is given a loan of a number of tiaras for their lifetime.
The Princess of Wales has 4 tiaras that she's loaned because these belong to the sovereign. And of those 4, my favourite is the Lotus Flower Tiara. It is, I think, a 1920s icon.
But perhaps the most iconic of all the royal tiaras is this, the spectacular Vladimir tiara.
It's a really elegant, timeless piece filled with diamonds. There are 15 circles connected by a wavy band that intersects them, and 15 enormous teardrop pearls hang from the loops, each of which is worth thousands of pounds.
But the tiara's story makes it priceless. Behind its shimmering exterior lies an untold tale of glamour, intrigue, and daring adventure.
The story of how the tiara got into the hands of the British royals is something a bit like a spy mystery.
The story began in Russia in 1874. The tiara was made by the imperial jewelers to the Russian royal family for Maria Pavlovna, the wife of Grand Duke Vladimir, the Tsar's brother. But after the revolution of 1917, communist Russia was no longer safe for aristocrats as wealthy and prominent as Maria Pavlovna.
When the Russian royal family came tumbling down, she hid her precious jewels in a secret compartment within her home, escaping with just her day jewels.
The Grand Duchess was the last Romanov to escape Russia, dying in France in 1920. Her family had lost everything, except for the jewels.
Hidden in a secret alcove in her palace, the tiara was under the noses of the Bolshevik government for many years.
Her son, Grand Duke Boris, persuades an art dealer friend of his to smuggle themselves into the country and get the jewels out. And then miraculously transports them 1,300 miles back across Europe, hidden in a leather Gladstone bag, all the way back to London.
Queen Mary bought the tiara for £28,000. Now, that's about the equivalent of £1.25 million today, a huge amount.
But despite the tiara's cost and pedigree, the royal family were keen to add their own personal touch.
It can also be worn with a stunning set of green emeralds. These were commissioned by Queen Mary, Queen Elizabeth's grandmother, and they were a set of cabochon drops that came from her own family's cache of gems.
The tiaras might be steeped in history, but like virtually every royal treasure and tradition, the family aren't afraid to adapt them to meet their modern needs. From tiaras to sceptres, fashion to funerals, the British monarchy has mastered the art of respecting ancient traditions whilst reinventing them for the modern world.
By adapting occasionally, progressing very slowly, but always having several feet, I would say, firmly in the past, they are holding us firm and reminding us where we've come from, who we are, and where we're going.
Next time, the diplomatic dilemmas of a traditional royal state visit.
The family are very aware that they are being used as a propaganda machine.
The sometimes dangerous relations between the palace and the press.
Diana, Princess of Wales, is chased to her death by people in search of a photograph of her.
And how the changing royal traditions of beauty put Elizabeth I in peril.
It could make your gums recede and your breath stink. You're basically giving yourself lead poisoning.
We were in spring, where started summer, connected together by the mother river, connected together under the same moon. Right now it's snow melt season. The flower leaves show off the fragrance, but I'm in the sunny season. The land to dry salt grains in my hometown. Footsteps the day he left, say together by the mother river. Connected together.